to address. But let's get back to the point. Why is this so important? Now, first of all, sell Zack Snyder's Justice League to Netflix is one of several feasible options that can happen if a boycott of WBD is carried out. WBD is in a financial situation right now where they are selling off IPs and they're selling off valuable properties from Looney Tunes to all the way to some properties which are, some of their, most, historic properties. And so this is a time when they're selling off things. And of course, the Snyderverse and the DCEU have been not seen as doable options by WBD for whatever reason. It may not be financial, it may be other reasons. And so they have actually stopped, mostly, sort of ended the DCEU, and they've started something called the DCU, and it's supposed to be a reboot of some sort. So if they're not capable of doing the DCEU right, or the Snyderverse, they're not capable, or they don't think they're able to do the Snyderverse, I can understand sell the Snyderverse to Netflix. I can understand that. Let another company try and do it. As happened with Army of the Dead. Army of the Dead was a property that Zack Snyder had, an IP that Warner Brothers did not feel that they could take advantage of, and so it ended up being in the hands of Netflix, and you've seen what happened with that. Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon right now is another property that um, was pitched to Warner Brothers. They did not think it was worth anything. The only difference between Zack Snyder's Justice League in this case, as a transactional thing, is that Warner Brothers actually produced the property. So if Zack, for example, if they sell that IP to Netflix, Zack Snyder's Justice League, that is, the actual movie, or lease it out, then that might be an opportunity for Netflix in conjunction with maybe some other distributor to put it into theaters, because Zack Snyder's Justice League has never seen theaters. So there's a lot that can happen in what they call the Snyderverse. They are saying that they are done with that, sort of like. So why not sell it off to Netflix, right? That's the point. So I get it. I get the idea. However, this idea will not work just like that. I'll tell you why. The company, WBD, at this present point in time, even though they're selling off IPs left, right, and center, there are two things worth noting that you must think about and why these people will not do it. Let me give you an example. The first one is when finally the Snyder Cut was released. When finally the Snyder Cut was released, it very well. It was called a global phenomenon. It was called many things, right? Its success has still been suppressed. WBD and HBO Max has never put out the actual figures, the actual numbers. We had to get third-party speculations on what these numbers were from data that was out there. But suffice it to say, and it was why this is important is because that people started to ask for the sequel to Zack Snyder's Justice League. Okay? My feed keeps on dropping for some reason. I don't know why that's happening. And the reason that I speak about this, and I'm not going to take too long with this, is because people asking for that is what caused Restore the Snyderverse hashtag to happen. When Restore the Snyderverse hashtag started happening, at the time it was called, said that this completes Zack Snyder's trilogy, even though Zack Snyder had storyboards for a Justice League trilogy. And she also went on to say that there would be no Ayer cut that's coming out, and there would be no further sequels to Zack Snyder's Justice League. Top of that, she spoke about toxic fans, and that they would not reward toxic fans. Where this toxic fan thing came from, because the studios actually had a view that fans were toxic. On top of that, not only did they do that, but then after that, they also want to say on record, a little later, I think it was in 20 or 2022, this year of them, that they regretted releasing Zack Snyder's Justice League, even in spite of the fact that it was the most talked of 2021. It won awards in 2021, and also that was successful. It was one of the most successful films of DC in 2021. Amazingly, they never released this movie into cinemas. I'm trying to get you guys to understand something. They never released this movie into cinemas. And on top of that, remember this: in spite of the calls for it to get a sequel, even some calls in some sectors. I know I was one of the vocal ones who asked for it to be in cinemas. It was never launched into cinemas. Fans had to take the initiative, and they rented out cinemas in the COVID to get to see the movie. On top of that, they said it was a cul-de-sac. It was described as a cul-de-sac by executives in Warner Brothers. So the feelings and the sentiment towards Zack Snyder's Justice League were all negative by the people who then managed the company. And when there was a change in regime, a change in that David Zaslav and Discovery merged with AT&T to now co-own, and then of course the Discovery and manage uh, Warner Brother and Warner Media, and call it something totally different, Warner Brothers Discovery. You would think that there would be a change in maybe the focus, and then the focus would be on the Snyderverse and so on. And initially it seemed that way, but then appearances are deceiving, because even when Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca were in charge, they did bring back the original Justice League characters, the people and the actors. But what a lot of people say is that they were going to restore the Snyderverse, which is not true, because Dwayne The Rock Johnson, if that was the case, then Black Adam would have been linked to Zack Snyder's Justice League. They had enough time to refine that movie. In fact, it was at the last minute that Henry Cavill was included in a cameo in Black Adam, because he did not show up for the Comic Con, if you guys remember. So even though they were cleaning up the movie and making it less, joke filled and stuff like that, they still at the same time were keeping the movie separate from the Snyderverse, because not only did they say that the Snyderverse was a cul-de-sac, but they also said, believe it or not, that Justice League 2017 was canon. They so did not want Zack Snyder's vision in the in the in the present DC slate, that they had no dealings with Henry Cavill. In fact, Toby Emmerich has been on the record now as saying that they did not want Henry Cavill as Superman anymore. So they didn't want Henry Cavill as Superman. They were phasing out Ben Affleck's Batman, and now we know they phased out all of them. They phased out all of them with James Gunn with the reboot. When Henry Cavill was fired afterwards, when James Gunn and Peter Safran came into power, Henry Cavill was fired. And that was the last straw. This is when we as DC fans, for 5 years, this company did not make any money off of the DCEU. No money whatsoever, because the direction they decided to go in the DCEU was away from what Zack Snyder's vision for it was. And the Snyderverse, what we call the Snyderverse, the movies that came under Zack Snyder when he was actually more in control of that universe and the direction it was going in, it sort of originated and founded the direction. The Snyderverse had been stopped since 2017, right? After the Wonder Woman movie, Warner Bros. Had rebooted the franchise through Justice League 2017. They basically did a reboot, a soft reboot, but a reboot. Same characters, same actors, and same characters, but different vision, different take. And that reboot went into Aquaman, and Snyderverse fans supported Aquaman. I realized that Aquaman had changed from what it was, and we saw that the concept art and the storyboards show us it was a totally different movie to what was originally conceived with James Wan and Zack Snyder. Even though James Wan still stayed in consultation with Zack Snyder throughout the whole process. Um, Jeff Johns had changed a lot of that movie. Now, in addition to that, we had Shazam that came after Aquaman, and this was under Walter Hamada was now in charge of DC Films, and Walter Hamada did another reboot of the franchise, a soft reboot, making Shazam ensuring that he tied into Justice League 2017. One, no one knew that it was Black Suit Superman that was in Snyder's universe. And in fact, it was only when Snyder got the chance to continue and finish his vision, we knew it was going to be Black Suit Superman. But anyway, continuing onwards, then we had a series of slumps from 2018 to the present time. The DCEU has slumped. Every single movie has slumped. The only thing saving DC and the DC brand in terms of live action was Joker and the Batman by Matt Reeves, which both directors did their own vision. Even though Todd Phillips was at odds with the studio in terms of funding, and he had to find his own funding to finish his own movie, which was a tremendous success. It's almost like these executives just do not know what a successful movie is. There was a whole set of Hollywood buzz. There was a whole set of Academy Award buzz when they heard that Joaquin Phoenix's Joker was going to be what was coming out. But for some reason, the studio never got that, and they never understood it. And to this day, the studio does not get it. They have this agenda where they want to move so far away from Batman v Superman, so far away from Zack Snyder, and thinking that he's supposed to be a failure, and they're trying to make him a failure. I don't know if it's just John's agenda or if it's the execs are just that stupid. But they are intent that Zack Snyder's visions for DC end here and now. So the studio is never going to just voluntarily sell Zack Snyder's Justice League to Netflix. And they have a history of doing this. They've held on to things like, even though this was never fully crystallized, they've held on to things such as the guy who did Batman, the first Batman 1989. I'm trying to remember his name right now. He also did the Addams Family spin-off series on Netflix. I'm trying to remember his name. Can you guys just tell me what the guy's name is? I can't remember his name right now. Tim Burton. Okay? They never let Tim Burton's Superman see the light of day. Tim Burton can't take that property and go to another place like Netflix or whatever and finish his movie. Okay? Because they have the rights to these movies. So, even though Warner Brothers Discovery is selling off and leasing off stuff to free up money because they're short of money to continue their DC line, and they're pumping money into to James Gunn right now. And even though James Gunn, there's no singular universe. There's still going to be the Matt Reeves universe. There's still going to be the Joker universe. And we also learn now that they're going to retain certain characters from the DCEU, or certain people at least from the DCEU, to play new roles in the DCU. And bear in mind that James Gunn does not have a completed script for Superman. He doesn't even casting for Superman. Everything's just rushed as usual with the studio. They're still going forward. In other words, what I'm trying to say to you is they're hell-bent on doing what they're doing. And no set of pleading and begging and asking, and no set of tremendous tweeting or tremendous amounts of fan fear is going to make them change their minds. Now, the fans are trying around, let Netflix as an executive, as a company, ask Warner Brothers for the property, but it's still not going to work. Not without us as fans denying Warner Brothers a red cent from our pockets. We have to stop the money flow to them for them to realize what the issue is. And even then they may misconstrue it. But it's not a problem, because if they can't sort out the money flow, they'll have to sell the company again. They'll have to turn it over to another owner. And if we have to force that process so that they turn the company over to another owner so that we can get fresh eyes, fresh management, maybe an expunging of even more executives from the company so that the company can see the light of day so that we can restore the Snyderverse, that's what we'll have to do. But the end game is, and we have a lot of DC fans on our side, the end game is that boycott WB and even fire James Gunn to make a proper reset, because what they have done is reset anything that had to do with Zack Snyder in the universe, which makes no sense because the whole universe was really initiated by Zack Snyder. And furthermore, the universe was quite successful financially, even though critically not so successful, but it was successful with Wonder Woman, and it was improving in terms of its critical and financial success. And it peaked in Aquaman, which, even though the studio did put their hands into the thing, Jeff Johns had his hands in it, was linked to the Snyder Cut. And linked to, and the guy who was, in Aquaman was pushing hard for the Snyder Cut. So That is all the reasons why it was so successful. I think it's the most successful DC movie to date, except for um, the Harry Potter movie. Okay, so what I'm saying to you guys is that Zack Snyder actually, without him, the DC brand has been going down and down and down because there's no vision. These execs have no vision. They're just doing a sort of a vendetta mandate that no, Zack mustn't have nothing. Zack mustn't have anything. And his fans, we mustn't let their fans get anything. And I'm telling you right now, right, whether they view us as toxic or not, they're going to put up resistance to ensure that sell Zack Snyder Justice League to Netflix doesn't happen. So, what can we do? When we boycott them, we put a lot of pressure on because that pressure, and it's strategic, that pressure means they're not getting any income whatsoever. And the outcome, no matter what, is going to be one in which we are favored because we will have the advantage because, one, they don't have money. So either they're going to listen to us to make the money or they're going to go under. And if they go under, somebody else is going to own the company. And when they own the company, maybe they will listen to us. So either way, we win. So this is how we have to play the game. We have to use the people who are saying boycott Warner Brothers and fire James Gunn is toxic. It's not toxic whatsoever. It's strategic, one, and two, it's deserving because DC fans realize James Gunn is nobody to be running DC Studios. He has done nothing to merit that. The only thing he has is the Peacemaker series on HBO Max, which are manufactured figures. We all know the company manufactures figures, and they're actually in a lawsuit because of that. And so we can't look at streaming figures. We have to look at the data, like theatrical releases and how they've done. And James Gunn has not done well theatrically to deserve the role that he has. All right? He has not proven anything. In fact, with a property in which David Ayer actually performed better in that property financially, James Gunn has performed poorly. So why is James Gunn there? It's nepotism. He's there. And that's why we say fire him. Furthermore, his judgment in terms of trying to reboot DC and trying to make a smooth transition has failed. All right, which is why we've been talking about boycott WB. So, quite frankly, and he's not a guy to write a Superman movie. He's not the best guy to write a Superman movie at all. In fact, I would say that he's made a poor choice by taking it upon himself to write the Superman movie instead of finding someone who is a really good writer to write the movie and the idea. Again, showing how selfish he is when it comes to these things. And on top of that, he has been agitating and provoking the core DC fan base for these movies, which is the Snyderverse fans. So I just want to say that boycott WB is an absolute necessity right now. And whatever else you want to branch out with, like, license Zack Snyder Justice League to Netflix. But again, it's very feasible if you keep boycott WB there. You have, and another thing fans need to understand, you guys are the audience. People in the industry, they're obviously not going to support you in boycotting anything because they're industry people, right? They have connections in the industry. So we don't expect them to do that. We have the luxury of being fans. We have the luxury of being the audience and saying, no, 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 we don't want that. We don't like this, okay? Or we take a stand. I may like this movie, but I'm not going to go watch it because of what you've been doing with the company, and especially with the DC brand. You need to correct that before I give you any money for anything. And that's a conscious decision, of course, to boycott versus being disillusioned and not interested in anything. And I've come to that stage now, especially after the firing of Henry Cavill, and especially after the removal of Gal Gadot, who has been performing as Wonder Woman. She's one of the best Wonder Woman. She had one fall, one slip. They've in the whole thing, um, um, in the whole scheme of things, the flops that have happened recently have not been as a result of the Gal Gadot's performance or Henry Cavill's performance or Ben Affleck's performance. It's been because the movies have been substandard. Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman 84 was substandard. Black Adam has been a substandard movie. Henry Cavill's cameo in it was was well received by most people. Me personally, I said I don't care for Richard Donner. I want to see Snyder cut Superman. And I'm gonna say this: the choices that these people have chose, administrative choices, not to listen to the fans. There was nothing. There was going to be no hurt. There was going to be no problems if Henry Cavill had simply come into the Hans Zimmer theme. If he had come into the Hans Zimmer theme in And studies have shown it. Even Sil Abdul with his channel, Sil Nation, has shown that people were just going to be cool, and it would have had a lot more people come to see this movie if Henry Cavill had simply come in to the Hans Zimmer theme. But they were hell bent on having the Justice League 2017 repeat of Henry Cavill. Now he didn't have the CGI problems, but they intended for him to emulate that Superman. And as a result of that, because the studio was hell bent, and I'm not talking about the studio, but basically Walter Hamada, Toby Emmerich in the background was fighting, I believe, David Zaslav. I think David Zaslav would have probably said, "Oh, go with Zack Snyder Justice League. Hey, you just did well. Let's ride that wave, right?" And I'm sure has a logical explanation as an exec. And I'm guessing Toby Emmerich, Jeff Johns, and all these other people, Walter Hamada, they would be pushing for no. And even Peter Safran, they would be pushing for no. We want the Superman everyone recognizes, so they can see it's Superman and the traditional Superman. And you just lost a whole bunch of Snyderverse people who would have pushed your movie. It would have made bank, but it wasn't meant to be, because what would have happened is The Rock would have monopolized the situation, and we would have never gotten the Snyderverse. Never. This dude is full of himself. He would have had The Rock versus Superman. It would have never had the Snyderverse. And we figured that out very quickly, because the guy never acknowledged Zack Snyder, never acknowledged the Justice League, that's Zack Snyder's Justice League. He never acknowledged that. And on top of that, the promo for his movie, they pulled stuff from Justice League 2017, telling us it's a continuity of that. When that universe didn't work, they doubled it down with James Gunn. I'm telling you, man, these people's their mindset was one in which they did not want anything to do with Zack Snyder whatsoever. No matter how successful Zack Snyder was there, they wanted him out of the DC properties. And we've seen shills and trolls on Twitter and elsewhere, on YouTube, etc., expressing those direct sentiments. They wanted Zack out of there since BVS. They wanted nothing to do with Zack, and they were happy for the opportunity to jump on his Justice League movie, which was going to be so epic, and just sabotage the crap out of it to make him look like he couldn't do anything. He couldn't direct. And so the way how James Gunn has treated the Justice League, Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa and all these guys in his Peacemaker series told us everything we needed to know. That they were out to sabotage, anything that had to do with the Snyderverse. So these people are not interested in any way in letting the Snyderverse see the light of day. You have to push them. You have to say enough is enough. You make no money. May you and the company go down and somebody else buy you over and get new executives and new fresh blood to start everything over. That's the only way. Because they're hell bent on it. There's no other way. So yes, sell Zack Snyder's Justice League or sell the Snyderverse to Netflix is a good idea. Zack Snyder's at Netflix. He's got favor with Netflix right now. They're doing great things. Netflix, and Zack are working hand in hand. That would be great. Great little collaboration using the Snyderverse and Netflix and having Netflix ask. But I can guarantee you Warner Brothers won't ever listen to them unless they have no choice. They're going to go under if they don't listen, or they're sold off and there's new management at Warner Brothers. Then only then they have a vendetta against Zack for the fact that he does what he wants to do there at their company, and they set mandates for him and he doesn't listen to their mandates. They're not the ones in control. They're not the power ones. Zack moves a little bit like James Cameron in the sense that he's subversive. He says, "Oh, cool," and then he does what he knows the principle of the thing is, and he subverts them, and they don't like that. Now, with respect to, they want directors they can control and make their mandate. They're in a power trip. They're not on making money, okay? So you have to understand this. Now, once you understand the mindset of these executives, now we can talk about what is to play out. So what to play out for Restore the Snyderverse, we have to boycott them. And I mean boycott them. I see some hungry, again, DC fans. They're buying, don't buy anything. Nothing. Don't buy Zack Snyder Justice League stuff. Don't buy anything that has to do with Zack Snyder. Or don't buy anything that has to do with WBD right now. Don't unsubscribe to their channels and everything. And I'm talking about Snyderverse fans because you guys are the majority anyway. Let them find other people to support their stuff. which they won't find because DC is a brand that a certain kind of person likes, right? And trying to echo and imitate Marvel is not going to work. Marvel's there already. All right, so Marvel fans are not going to go support DC if it's the same thing as Marvel. They're not going to waste their time. Right? They're Marvel fans. So what I'm trying to say to you is, we have them where we want them, and it's countdown time now. They're on the clock. If Zaslav really wants to really do something, he says he wants to protect the brand, he wants to talk about the Trinity and all of that. Well, bro, this crunch time now. Your words, that's what you said. You said that. Now we're gonna see if you can do it. If you really mean that. And I can't care less if he has a tantrum or not. I don't care how powerful those guys are. They need our money. And if we don't give them a red cent, they can't do nothing. And then we are in a position of options. We have a position of options, whether it's going to be Restore the Snyderverse through the company, whether it's going to be Restore the Snyderverse for a third party, whether it's going to be Restore the Snyderverse through Netflix, Amazon, Universal, Paramount, Disney, whatever it is. We're going to have options. So we have more options than them. And don't ever forget it. The people in the industry are not going to stand up like this. They're going to be one or two going to stand up and say what it really is. But we have to stand up as fans. So boycott WB / with sell Zack Snyder to Netflix is an option. But what is not an option for us, I believe, and I try to persuade fans to understand, is we must make it clear, especially fans who are not about boycotting. We don't think it's useful to use the word boycott. We're going to use it now. And we need to circulate it all the way through social media. Now, there are other initiatives and things we need to do, like the games and the programs supporting Rebel Moon and enjoying recapping the beauty of Zack Snyder's stuff, and as well as other DC movies that are good. Whether it's Joker, whether it's the Dark Knight trilogy, whatever. But showing that quality films and directors who get the time and space to air out and show their films. Avatar is a perfect example of that, and this is a great year because we're going to have Christopher Nolan coming out with stuff, Zack Snyder coming out with stuff. I really, 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 it hurts my heart that I'm going to have to not watch Dune, because Dune is a movie. Denis Villeneuve is a hell of a director, and the first Dune movie I heard was really good, and that's my kind of movie. Again, Matt Reeves is a hell of a director. I mean, he didn't do anything earth-shattering, but I still think I would have appreciated his Batman movie. I think I would have. But again, I did not watch his Batman movie on principle of what they did to Ben Affleck, and I'm not going to stop. I'm going to stand on principle now, and I'm definitely behind boycotting nepotism and executives that run wild and rampant, feeling that they have so much power they can do whatever they want. WB has been throwing garbage at the wall for 5 years, going on 6 years. We cannot allow them to continue this nonsense. Either there's going to be a complete restructuring of the company and somebody else will have to take charge, or the company will have to sell off stuff, because they're showing that they're very incompetent when it comes to managing the DC IPs and brands. They don't know what they're doing. The only thing that they've had that was a success, and it wasn't in the DCEU, was Matt Reeves' The Batman. It wasn't anything really special in terms of story and anything to challenge anyone or to make them think. It was basically playing it safe in terms of Batman's ideals and values. And the movie was a little bit less realistic than I thought it would be, even though the music was pretty good. Putting people on grappling hooks. Come on now, get out of here. Nobody's going to be on a beam on a grappling hook. Come on now. Where are you going to get these convenient grappling hooks from? You know what I'm saying? And he still killed people in that movie. But my point anyway is, playing it safe is not the way to go in this industry. You have to take risks. You have to fail to succeed. Warner Brothers has been playing it safe and trying to do the MCU thing, and they've been failing. They're about to double down and do it, and that's just a complete failure. Before they even start, they should probably abort that mission, and they should probably think about moving in the direction of the Snyderverse or leaving the Snyderverse as an option, but that's not something they're going to do. They have explicitly shown that they're against Zack Snyder's take on the DC. Even though the multitude of people and the majority of DC fans support it, they don't want it. Okay? It's just what it is. And the only way that's going to change is by changing the management of DC. You have these people as figureheads, but they're dormant, and you bring in some other set of people, let their contracts expire while the other people are working, and pushing the Snyderverse forward. And if they want to, they can push together a brand of the DCU or something else that they want to do. Having options is always great. I've never said that anything was wrong with Walter Hamada pushing a certain direction. The problem with these people was they did not want the Snyderverse to be continued. They didn't want Zack's vision. They were pushing Zack out of the company and treating Zack very badly. And so the only reason Zack Snyder's Snyder Cut came out was because we pushed for it, people. Don't let them bullshit you about COVID and HBO Max. No, they launched HBO Max off the back of Zack Snyder's Justice League. And they made a ton of money off of it. And they know that too. But they will never tell you that. Okay? And they just did not like the fans. They didn't like how we were standing up and taking initiative. And you saw the pieces in Hollywood where fans shouldn't have their way and stuff like that. But ultimately, in the end, we did it, people. We got the Snyder Cut out there, and we're going to do it again. We'll restore the Snyderverse. These people are in a precipitous position where their company could close down tomorrow. Okay, because they're hoping that Shazam will do something for them. They'll move the needle. That they will get people to go watch Shazam. Nobody's going to go watch Shazam. It's boycott already. So once that does it, they're going to be in the hole. And by the time the next movie flops at the box office, they don't make any money off of that movie, they're going to be in deep trouble. And they know it. Right? So don't mind how their stocks are going up or down. So I'm telling you guys right now, this year is the end game for them. And they know it. They know it. And they're trying to pull it out. And I told you, they're determined to go in a certain direction. We as fans need to hold our ground, keep our message consistent. We want the Snyderverse, for the Snyder fans, at least Snyderverse fans, we want the Snyderverse restored. So let's push for that. For the other DC fans out there that want other things, and they may not be Snyderverse fans, they also ticked off. So there's a great majority of DC fans that ticked off because Henry Cavill wasn't coming back, and they want to see Henry Cavill back. They will go wherever Henry Cavill is because they're Henry Cavill fans. I know because I have a Facebook group. There's an enormous amount of Gal Gadot fans who love her rendition of Wonder Woman, and right now they're heartbroken. And the funny thing about this is Wonder Woman, in terms of HBO Max, has dominated HBO Max's streaming and has outsold any other property in terms of DC, okay, when it comes to home box office. Wonder Woman is in demand like crazy. So even though the movie wasn't that great, I mean, they've made a ton of money, and they've been pushing it with Wonder Woman franchise. So I expect Wonder Woman and Gal Gadot, the fact that they basically are giving Gal the boot, they may try and figure out a way to soft reboot or something. But ultimately, in the end, as Walter Hamada and they are trying to do. They were trying to get an all-female cast kind of thing going. Truth be told, at the end of the day, Gal is a very loved character, and it looks like whatever plans they had for Wonder Woman 3 is gone. It's gone. It's out the window right now. So let me say this so people understand what I'm talking about. Right now, Warner Brothers Discovery and also James Gunn are not seen favorable by most fans. They're not going to say anything. They're going to keep quiet. But they're going to pay them back for what they did. Okay, the audience and fans are going to pay them back handily for what they've done. And my point being that boycott WB, I want to vocalize that because you always have the few people who tell the truth. And so those people need to come out there and say what they got to say. And you have to be consistent with it, and you have to send the message continuously. It does affect their stocks. It does affect their brand. It does make shareholders very nervous. Most of the shareholders are AT&T shareholders. You also have some Discovery shareholders. They're not the majority of shareholders in that company. So I can tell you right now, the shareholders, the more they lose confidence in the management, is the more likely they will change management. And this is all very important for people to understand. In the background, AT&T is probably trying to work out a deal again to get rid of the administration that they just put in power. I don't care what legal, legal framework or writing they have done to try and prevent people from doing certain things. There's always a way to work around that. So what I'm saying to WBD is where there's a will, there's a way. And y'all better find a way to restore the Snyderverse because the Snyderverse fans are the ones who are most problematic right now. You can get them seated somehow. You're going to be okay because they're the majority of the fans. But if you don't, let me say another thing, which a lot of people do not understand. The Snyderverse fans are not alone. There are Snyderverse fans who are Avatar fans and who are Alita Battle Angel fans. And they're also, a lot of them are also anime fans. Okay? So it's a wide spectrum. That's why I said when you talk about Snyder fans, whether you're saying they're toxic or not toxic, nobody cares because fans will be what they are. Okay, they're passionate about what they say, and ultimately, in the end of the day, if you're going to try, if you're going to try to ostracize and isolate some of them, I do hope that most of the fans come together. You know, just like how when you attack an exec, all the execs come together, but they're not big in number. We need to, as fans, when anyone attacks the fans, that the fans come together and then attack that person. Because let me explain what I mean. I don't mean attacking like going to attack them physically. I mean attack them in terms of come to the defense of that person and use reasoning and logic behind it to argue that person, let that person know, no, no, you're stepping out of line. The executives need to understand this, and they have their own agenda, and they're doing their own thing. It's not backed on the audience. It's definitely no respect for the audience. They have no respect for the fans. They are disconnected to the audience, and they're disconnected to the fans. And I know Prime would have another point of view. You know, he has a corporate view because he's a corporate person. But quite frankly, don't give a damn about his view right now. You know, Prime needs to understand something. Prime needs to understand that corporate business only feeds off the backs of the consumer. And if the consumer is not supporting corporate business, it'll go down. They depend on us. It's not the other way around. We don't depend on the corporate people. It's entertainment. We can get entertained other places. We can go other places. So all the games that Warner and I see the guys who were with Rocksteady, they're gone. And I'm seeing a lot of exodus from Warner Brothers and Warner Brothers properties. Christopher Nolan's gone, Zack Snyder's gone, Patty Jenkins is gone. Everybody's leaving. Rocksteady people are gone, and it's just hurting the company more and more and more because the people they're replacing don't have any imagination, don't have the creativity to capture the audience. This is their major problem. They're thinking cheap budget movies. That's not the problem. The problem is y'all lack creativity. Y'all have a creativity drain because you're committee led. You're letting executives lead the company when executives should take a back seat and facilitate the creativity of the directors. So these executives don't even know their role, and they're working in a corporate structure, thinking that formulas will solve the problem, which is not what's going to happen. And so every time they fail, because they can't predict what human beings would want, they're doing all their cost studies and all their screenings and stuff. That don't mean nothing. You know, um, the thing that makes a difference is not people who are yes men, and they have a lot of yes men around them. So that structure, they're saying, be careful how you talk to them. No, I'm not careful about how I talk to exec, especially after the atrocities they've done in the history of the company. I'm not careful about anything. I will not be careful, and I'll tell you why. It's not I hate execs or I'm being ruthless or whatever. It's because they've accumulated a lot of distrust among the community, and they've built up a lot of bad will amongst the fans and also along amongst the audience. So that the audience not only is this not this is now disinterested, but they don't want to see them. They want them to leave. They want them to go away. That's how bad it is. Okay? Because how can I have confidence and pride in the DC brand if it's being run in the mud by executives? They're messing up everything. It's not the creators that you can primarily put the blame on. It's the executives. The executive arm doesn't know what they're doing. They have no vision. They're just throwing things at the wall in a frenetic pace, and they're trying to make as much money off of the system as they can. And to me, that's sad because Warner Brothers has had a history of having rich lore and tremendous stories and great directors. And to see all of that go to waste over corporate executives who do not know what they're getting involved in, they're not attuned to the audience. Even The Rock Johnson, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, at least he tried to speak as if he's in tune with the audience. James Gunn, he's trying to play like he's in tune with the audience. We know he's not, but he's trying because his brand of DC would be one in which it's much lighter and it's funnier, and he would try to find ways to get chiseled people to look, to tone down on the actual violence and the actual graphicness of DC. And I'm not saying that DC has to be only graphic and violent. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, graphics and violence means absolutely nothing to me. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad was pretty graphic, pretty violent. So what? It was rated R. But the characters weren't taken serious. They weren't serious characters. They weren't well fleshed out characters. So who gives a damn? I don't. That's why his movie flopped. Um, when you're dealing with uh, the demographic that you're dealing with, which obviously they don't even know what demographic they're dealing with, you need to understand that these people didn't go to Marvel because there was an alternative. Now, when you take that alternative away from them, they have nowhere to go in terms of Warner Brothers, so they'll leave Warner Brothers and they'll go somewhere else and be entertained. But in the meantime, they'll watch Warner Brothers burn, and they will purposefully and intentionally make sure that others know what happened with Warner Brothers, so that the others will also say, "No, that's just too gross. I'm gonna take the stand that you have." So that's what Boycott Warner Brothers is about. It's about letting people know what this company has been doing all along, why it has been uh, poorly performing. It's poorly performing not because of the directors, not because of the creators, not because of the IPs, but because of the management of the company. And that needs to be nipped in the bud. These people need to be held accountable, so that if you slip up, then they should be fired. They took Greg Silverman, who pales in comparison to the amount of rubbish and stupidity and poor decision making that has happened of recent times. They fired him off of BVS. They fired Greg Silverman off of BVS. Okay? A movie that actually made money, and no one's getting fired for doing the level of nonsense that these executives are doing. No one's getting fired. They're keeping their jobs. Actors that are underperforming and have been in underperforming movies, they're getting to go on. That kind of Mickey Mouse kind of crazy thing that's going on in this company needs to come to an end right now. Nepotism needs to end. Those people in the background pulling strings, they need to be fired and get far away from DC properties, and we need to have a rewash of them. And then you continue with the Snyderverse, or you continue with some serious director who could actually direct, serious leader or head of DC who could actually push DC forward in a sensible direction where everybody could say, "Oh, that makes sense. Ah, okay, I could write with this dude because this makes sense." But that's not what's happening right now. And so ultimately, in the end, there's no excitement now. It's devoid of everything. It's like a desert place. We have creators leaving the company, and that's only happening because the management of the company is just atrocious. I mean, it's this is all time low management of the company. Okay, and that's why it's fair game for us as fans to say we're boycotting them. We're not giving them a single damn cent, and not only that, we want this dude that they just hired out for nepotism and out of lack of performance to be fired. And he has a questionable background. Okay, fire this dude. So that's how we look at it. That's the pushback by the fans. We need to push back. We can't stay idle. We can't stay quiet on this issue. We must speak on it. We don't care what the industry says. We don't care what the people in the industry say because they're in the industry. They have to play ball. We don't have to. So that's what I got to say to the fans out there. Understand it is a necessary step towards anything else you want to get, whether it's sell Zack Snyder Justice League to Netflix, whether it's restore the Snyderverse by releasing the Snyder Cut in cinemas, whether it's sell WBD to Universal or just, sell WBD to Paramount or wherever, right? Whatever initiative you're thinking about, or whether it is fire all execs in WB, or whatever it is, you have to understand it all starts by boycotting them, denying them money, and telling them you're denying them the money. You must let them know I'm not paying for nothing you have. Not until you sort this issue out. And they have a lot of years upon years of doing this to creatives. From the great Richard Donner all the way down now to Zack Snyder and David Ayer. And these guys must get their cuts to see the light of day. That's why we even Spartans. This is why we the Batgirl never came out. Okay? And I don't know. Maybe it'd be worth a while to see that movie. I don't know. I know it's not my kind of movie. I can tell you that from the get go. But what I do know is that certain directors who have proven themselves and were solid directors and did great DC content, they were, because the executives felt they were getting too powerful and they couldn't dictate to them what was happening, and director said, I'm leaving, man. I'm not sticking around for this. Um, these executives do not understand what their role is, so they play power play on them. And what happened? The franchise went to shit. It always happens. It always happens. The executives sabotage the process. The studio gets it puts its grimy hands way too much in the creative's work, and it sabotages the work. And we've seen it time and time again with these stupid studios. Okay, not just Warner Brothers, studios in general. You know, they tried to tamper with James Gunn's Avatar, tampered with Zack Snyder's Batman v Superman, tampered with Zack Snyder's Justice League. Okay, and still, even when Zack Snyder was putting his rendition of Justice League out there, they still trying to tamper and give him mandates. You're not supposed to give a guy mandates for his own named film. Come on now. And that's how these executives been moving. And it's very, very poor taste. It's very, very poor. Um, and I couldn't care less about them because they sabotage so many people. They sabotage Henry Cavill as well. That I don't care about them like that. I'm not defending the company anymore. You know, there was a time when I used to defend the company. I'm not defending that company. I'm not defending what they're doing. They are a public enemy right now, for me and for many, many people like myself. So this is what I got to leave with you guys. Shout out to the people viewing this. Don't forget you can also donate via PayPal to my account. I'll try and put the link in the comment section. I'm out of here. I am Christ I am disciple, aka Answer Philip. I just want to leave you guys with a really simple little word. It is that all things work together for good to those people who love the Lord. So I want to leave you guys with that. You guys have a good day today, and may God bless you. Peace.